Hello, it's Ash Teeter with Lost Coast Populist News, hosting the Reading Between the Headlines podcast, where we go over local and national headlines, looking a little closer at what ones that might seem a little bit interesting. So we're gonna start out by checking out the LCP, Lost Coast Populist site, see what's new here. It's the Outpost spins Ferndale drag show, cancellation to push the hate. So we will be looking at this a little bit closer after a little bit here. What else do we have going on? We've got John Money, the godfather of gender identity and pedophile apologist. We've got the Wednesday Netflix series Gomez Dies Suddenly. We've got First Amendment right to protest sabotage by a social justice elite class. And this is Talk Shop with Miles Slattery. And this is a port in from the KINS. You can find that on our site amongst our aggregated content. So moving on to the North Coast weather situation here. Just look at this stream here. This is the climate river they're talking about that's been pouring in, just dumping wind and rain on us, and it's no joke. And this is a few days old here. I think I heard an update from Gavin Newsom saying that we're like on the 9th storm we have coming in. We've had like 8 consecutive storms in the atmospheric river flowing so far. Now we're on number 9. So hopefully we'll get a little respite after this and let the waters go down a little bit and let things dry out a little bit so people can recover and catch their breath for just a moment here. But so this is the Eco News Report. Climate change supercharging winter storms. Global warming increases the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, supercharging winter storms like the slate of atmospheric rivers that have smashed the west coast. More moisture also means increased risk of flooding, as we have tragically experienced this year. And that is not a joke, but get into some of the other aspects of the weather we've been seeing. This is flash flood watch for the area of the August complex in parts of Trinity County and Mendocino County. And that was on the 7th of January here. And yeah, it's no joke with all that water coming in, flooding, winds. It's really been something else here, and because of this, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors declared a local emergency due to severe winter storms. Or let me see, I think they might actually be doing that this Tuesday. It's like, yeah, I think this is this upcoming Tuesday they're set to do it. And it's like the only thing on the agenda because they're not having a regular meeting because of the holiday. But go down. Highway 36 remains closed west of Grizzly Creek due to slide activity. I mean, just look at that hillside that came down there over the road. And I heard that, I don't know if it was this one, but I heard a vehicle got trapped under one of these, and that's just no good at all, getting stuck in that kind of situations. Really be careful out there driving, folks, because it's a winter weather war zone out there on the roads here. And then go here. This is down in Shelter Cove, some of the high tides. Just look at those things, just monsters at like 30-foot swells at some points. Just craziness. That is Mother Nature at work right there. Nothing else to say. Wow. Okay, so now we're going to go to a little clip of might provide another explanation for why we're seeing so much rainfall here.
Yeah, I was working on a story at Sacramento Executive Airport yesterday when this aircraft passed by on its way to the hangar. My photographer and I noticed these odd attachments on the wings. You can see them right there. So we asked the pilot about them. It turns out that plane is a cloud seeding aircraft, and it was flying through this morning's rain. The cloud seeding today was done by SMUD as a way to help increase stream flows to allow for more hydroelectric power generation. Here's the basic science. Clouds form when billions of tiny water vapor particles condense onto dust and other microscopic particles to form water droplets. Those dust particles are called cloud condensation nuclei. Big phrase there. So you can think of them as cloud seeds. Every cloud has them, but not every cloud has enough to produce rain. That's where cloud seeding comes in. It's a weather modification technique that adds more of these tiny particles to the lower part of the atmosphere. That's done with aircraft like what you just saw or ground-based generators. The goal is to make the clouds more effective rain and snow producers. Silver iodide is the most commonly used cloud seed, and while silver is a very toxic heavy metal in large quantities, environmental research shows that cloud seeding is not likely to be harmful to wildlife, although it may reduce the growth of algae and other bacteria in freshwater systems. Still, cloud seeding operations are carefully monitored to ensure that it's safe for the environment and for us. But now the question, does it work? Cloud seeding has been used. Yeah, I was working on a story at Sacramento Executive Airport yesterday when this aircraft passed by on its way to the hangar.
Okay, well, yeah, that says a lot right there with the cloud seeding, because if they're doing cloud seeding on on top of what we're already getting, then that could be some really bad news for for us here, and it would be horrible if that was the case, and that some of this like extreme storm damage was like intentional, but hopefully not. Anyways, here we're gonna move on to another the set of story we talked about back on the Loco site to begin with the outpost spinning the Ferndale drag show cancellation to push hate. So we're going to start out by looking at the headline from Las Coast Outpost. Ferndale drag show canceled after beware sign at the local church prompts concerns about an extremist response. I'll just read their opening paragraph or so here. A planned drag show fundraiser in Ferndale has been canceled over concerns about an extremist backlash after a conservative church in town posted a warning message about the event on its public-facing sign. The all-age Roaring Twenties drag show event was supposed to be a fundraiser for Lost Coast Pride, a nonprofit organization created 2 years ago in response to the anti-LGBTQ message posted on a sign outside St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church. But anyways, this stayed pretty consistent across local media. And you look at the headline from Time Standard, it's very similar. It says, Ferndale drag show canceled after threats made online. But as you'll see later in a video demonstrated by the pastor at the St. Mark's, there's no real receipts for these claims. They claim that there's threats, but no one took screenshots or anything. And I was noticing this myself when reading through both the Lost Coast Outpost and the Time Standard, that there's claims, and they said that these things happened online, but they don't really cite any evidence of this happening. So at the Lost Coast Populist, we felt it necessary to kind of dig a little deeper, so to speak, and so we managed to get interviews from both the Old Steeple and from St. Mark's pastor, and it kind of paints a different picture than painted by the stories of the other media like the Lost Coast Outpost and the Time Standard. So this is a quote from the Old Steeple owners. We think it's important not to get into an argument about which side is worse, because we all know that in this age of social media, there's far too many vile commentators on both sides of any ideological or political spectrum. We think it's important to include opposing voices so everyone involved has an accurate understanding of how the controversy is viewed by the larger community. And so we have an opportunity to expand our understanding of the issue. Rather than generalize the entire communities, why not look at the activities on a case-by-case basis? And that's a really good down-to-earth sentiment there, and that's kind of what a lot of us were talking about back with the Eureka drag show at the Jefferson Center. Is like, there might be some people on, both sides of things, or that yell and say mean things, but that's not a good reason to generalize and call one group a hate group. Just because some people might overreact or say stuff that's offensive. It's just not really good practice. But I'll read the last paragraph here. Lost Coast Outpost and friends emit thoughtful and reasonable remarks from Ferndale Music Co. So, media groups like the Lost Coast Outpost parent company, Lost Coast Communications LLC, have illustrated time and time again their incapability of acting or reacting outside of a narrowly set structure of bias. This bias renders them unable to report the not-so-hard-to-imagine reality of a small town rejecting things like an all-age drag show. It also makes it hard for them when the subjects of their interviews have the following remarks about this incident when interviewed subsequently by the Lost Coast Populist news team. And this goes back to the quote I just read by the Ferndale Music Company, the Old Steeple, Cherry March co-owner with Paul Beatty. Then our closing paragraph goes up. Instead of accepting that people hold different perspectives, belief structures, and philosophical positions in the community, the local media and their leftist mob deny these fundamental truths. This manifests in their articles as the ever-popular victim card, crying wolf about another imaginary group of dangerous extremists. They require to stoke fear into the hearts of the readers, a reaction they require. They don't think too hard about the situation. They don't research it from all the angles and discover the plethora of nuances that might indeed exist within this saga. You know what they say about the results of crying wolf and repetition? Such actions of ignorance lead to irrelevance and eventually being all but ignored. The caution of enabling such behavior would just perpetuate its harmful effects. So, moving on to the Outpost spins Ferndale drag show cancellation to push hate. And this article is really a good one to read because what it goes into is the full interview with the owners of the Old Steeple and the Ferndale Music Company. So yeah, right, go down about halfway through, and that's where the full interview starts. So this is like where you get, one side just unabridged without anything inserted, and it's just a lot of good information, just them giving their opinion. But for now, we're going to go to a clip from the other side, mainly. It's like from the pastor at the St. Mark's here. But first, we are going to do a little blip for LCP products, and then we'll be back right after that.
Are you tired of the woke local media? One way you can support Lost Coast Populist is by purchasing our stylish clothing and accessories. Every purchase helps us keep fighting the good fight and leaves you as a beacon of the growing patriot ideology within our community.
A Pride event was canceled at the Old Steeple in Ferndale after St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church posted a sign in all caps reading, "Beware, drag show for kids coming to the Old Steeple." Loco has this. The Roaring Twenties Pride event was nixed from the Old Steeple out of fear of an extremist response to the sign. Similar stories have been heard around the country. Pastor Tyler Bramwell falsely defined the Ferndale event as a hypersexual LGBTQ grooming drag show aimed at children, rather than a run-of-the-mill pride event celebrating personal freedoms. The all-ages event did promote a drag show element, but organizers repeated the explanation that all-ages drag shows are more Shakespearean or like theater performances and not sexual at all. Event promoters noted that they're rescheduling this, and they brought up the show To Catch a Predator, noting the number of pastors and religious people seen trying to molest children on that show versus the lack of drag queens. You also may remember this pastor, Tyler Bramwell, has posted many controversial signs in the past demonizing the LGBTQ community. However, it's been argued that his most significant impacts have been new pride organizations, pride parades, pride demonstrations, and bolstering support of pride in Ferndale.
Didn't know you could move like that.
I'm Pastor Tyrell Bramwell, and this is a Canceled Christian Comment. Now, there are a lot of lies being spread out there about the cancellation of the all-ages drag show that was scheduled to take place at the Old Steeple in February. When the owners of the Old Steeple canceled the all-ages drag show they were helping to bring to Ferndale, their stated reason was safety.
This seems like it's not a safe thing for our family, our business, our community.
It wasn't because they thought better of sexualizing Ferndale's children or about warping our kids' vulnerable minds by exposing them to so-called entertainment for adults, traditionally indulged in by gay men and others struggling with sexual perversions. Their concern, as stated, was their safety, as to be expected. After all, we live in a time characterized on one hand by safetyism and on the other, selfishness. That aside, they had a concern, and they acted accordingly. No one can take issue with that. What I can take issue with, what I do take issue with, is any accusation that St. Mark's is to blame for their perceived fear of potential danger, be it from bummed-out leftists or quietists in Ferndale who think I'm stirring up a mess in our city. We are not. I am not to blame for the tension in town because I'm concerned about a danger to my neighbors and am acting accordingly. What is that old saying? The only thing necessary for evil to triumph in this world is for good men to do nothing. Despite what agitators may say, faithful Christians care about the well-being of our neighbors. Those we know personally, such as the Old Steeple owners. I know Paul and Sherry personally. And those, any number of those, we don't know. Like a whole host of residents in town who were at risk of being led into sin by the now canceled drag show. I care about all of them. The members of St. Mark's care about all of them. Ryan Burns reported that in an email statement, Beatty and March told the Outpost that they made the painful decision to cancel the event out of an abundance of caution, after being alerted to online blowback. Friends and customers reached out to us regarding threatening Facebook messages that pointed to the possibility of extremists attending the event to disrupt it. Asked for specifics or screenshots, they said the post in question had been deleted. In a follow-up call, Beatty said he'd been alerted to a comment on Facebook asking for the names and addresses of organizers. We flagged that post, and it was removed, he said. Now, I know for a fact Miss March's fears are real. I also know from personal experience that when you have serious concerns of this nature, you grab screenshots of threatening statements and save harassing messages. However, in our current cultural economy of victimhood, evidence isn't necessary, is it? See, had a reporter asked me if I had concerns regarding my safety or the safety of my family, I could say yes. And if asked if I had any specifics or screenshots to validate my concern, I would actually be able to provide images like these, which are of a threatening and harassing nature.
You guys should probably change that sign, and if you don't, there's going to be probably a big community outlash.
Fucking kick rocks, asshole.
I saw your sign out front, and I just want you to know that your sky fairies aren't fucking going to do anything for you.
I'm a patient man, but when you begin to do things like this, my patience wears thin.
If you do think that this is not a big deal and not something to be talked to about or spoken with, you were sorely mistaken. Maybe I'll come down on a Sunday and speak with someone directly, because this hate cannot be spread. You fucking homophobic assholes. Take your bigoted awful sign down.
But you see, on this side of things, we're not asked those questions. Despite the fact that St. Mark's has actually, not potentially, actually lived through the actions of extremists who have broken numerous laws in order to intimidate us. And that gets to the point. The Christians at St. Mark Lutheran Church in Ferndale care so much about the well-being of our neighbors. Our own safety doesn't matter. We're not so selfish as to put ourselves before our neighbors, those we know, and even those we don't. We're willing to stand up and engage the evil around us, even if it means I'm taken out or my house is burned down. I will continue to stand up to evil for the sake of my neighbors, even if it means I myself must forfeit my eternal inheritance in Christ. Now, I'm Pastor Tyrell Bramwell, and this has been a Canceled Christian Comment.
So, there you have it from Pastor Tyrell Brandwell. I personally think he's, just as entitled to his opinion as anyone else thinks they are to theirs. And you notice, like, from the opening of that last video with the person reporting on it, that some other local media figure just saying that, the Tyler Brandwell's claims of what he views the all-age drag show as, like, had been disproven just because of other people's opinions on the matter. So when you go to disprove someone's opinion with someone else's opinion and you call that fact, that's kind of leads into our next subject here, where this opinion-based science that's led to the whole nonsense with all the vaccines here. So we will move on to national news here, and this is the Liberty Daily, and it's talking about public schools. They're going to start screening athletes for heart problems while pretending it's normal. There's an apparent trend that's forming across America, and for once, it's not a negative one. More Americans are rapidly waking up to the reality that the COVID jabs may be ineffective or unsafe. For those who regularly read our stories or hear my shows, you've likely been aware of these facts for a long time. But now, the normies are waking up in droves, which is prompting responses from organizations that have previously been firm and confident in their pro-vax stances. And this is not isolated. Here we go. The CDC identifies possible safety concerns for certain people receiving COVID vaccines. Here's our favorite, Dr. Anthony Fauci, saying that it's still very important to get COVID vaccines and boosters. But do we even want to listen to this guy? Let's see what he has to say.
Meet Ben. He's a senior manager at Extreme Express.
In an industry like logistics, real-time communication is crucial to our daily operations. Everything has to happen real-time. Slack's perfect for that sort of communication.
Get 50% off Slack.
Commercial break.
A more efficient way to work.
The former White House chief medical advisor, whether we should be worried about this. Doctor, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.
I was just thinking, you've been pushing, again, people have to get vaccinated. They should get their booster shots. We're told even ahead of this news, whatever you make of it, doctor, that only 16% of those eligible to get it have gotten it. And I'm wondering if news like this, which so far amounts to nothing too alarming, could give them pause.
Well, it might give them pause, but I think the important thing, Neil, to point out is how transparent and upfront the CDC has been. This is a signal, as your reporter correctly said, most likely is not going to be a relevant signal because several of the other surveillance and monitoring mechanisms that are put in place have not come up and found this signal. No other country.
Yeah, but we move on to this here. Yes, looks like the conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers were right again. This is from DC Drano on Twitter. And this, talking back to the CDC, is now going to investigate the link between CDC, or between COVID-19 vaccines and strokes. Too little, too late? Let's see, this is from Fox News.
CDC is now saying, and we are just getting word of this now, regarding the COVID vaccine, the CDC is now saying that there has been enough cases of people who have had the vaccine, received the vaccine, and then suffered a stroke. The agency will now be investigating any potential links between the shots and the strokes in some of those patients. And we are just getting word of this now.
Okay, and what else do we have here? Oh yes, Project Veritas clip here. Pfizer scientist Chris Cross was aware that their experimental mRNA vaccine was likely to cause myocarditis, another heart ailment.
Chris Croce is a senior associate scientist with Pfizer. He goes on to explain a test that is currently taking place at Pfizer, not to determine the effectiveness, but to see if it is leading to heart attacks.
I'm glad you didn't get any myocarditis.
Yeah.
'Cause that's a concern, right?
Yeah. More so for younger people.
Why?
That's what we're looking into right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so, we just sent like 3,000 patients samples to get tested for like elevated troponin levels. To see if it's vaccine based or so.
What's it look like?
I don't know. We just sent that over this past week, and the last batch will be sent over next week. All external testing. We'll see. Hopefully it's good. Because I mean, if not, then my opinion, that might pull something from the market.
Oh yeah, that'd be horrible just to have something pulled from the market. I mean, what could be worse? You know, that could hurt the bottom line too. That'd be terrible.
Millions more people in England could be prescribed daily cholesterol-lowering statin pills to cut their risk of a heart attack or stroke under new advice for the NHS. The National Institute for Health and Care Excellence says the cheap price of tablets and the possible health gains mean they should be considered more often. In England, high cholesterol leads to around 7% of all deaths. Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Asim Malhotra.
So yeah, this is a cardiologist. He's saying that it's likely a contributory factor to excess cardiovascular deaths is the COVID mRNA vaccine and rollout, and it should be suspended pending an inquiry. And saying, we did it, we broke the mainstream broadcast. This is made the BBC news, which is good. And this is from Dr. Asim Malhotra.
He is a consultant cardiologist and specialises in statins. Thank you for joining us this morning, Doctor. Good morning. In terms of what NICE is saying, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I have a great respect for NICE, but I think in this regard with statins, I think this guidance is misguided. And the reason I say that, Wester, is something I've managed thousands of people with heart disease in my career, prescribed statins, particularly to high-risk people. And I just want to emphasize that people who've had a heart attack or high risk, that's where we see the greatest benefits of statins. But in this guidance, this basically applies to people who have a less than 10% risk. And if you have a less than 20% risk of having a heart attack or stroke in the next 10 years, one thing that we always tell patients when I prescribe statins or discuss it with them is that there is, first of all, no what we call mortality benefit. They're not going to live any longer over a 5-year period. And that the absolute benefits for them is about 1%, 1 in 100 in preventing a non-fatal heart attack or stroke. So that informed decision-making needs to be part of the process in discussion with patients. And then help the patient make the decision themselves. In my own experience with Wessa, when most patients are told this information, they actually say, "Doc, to be honest, I don't really fancy those odds. Is there anything else I can do?" And of course, the big issue really that's ongoing, which has been going on for years in this country, is that we've not been addressing unhealthy lifestyles, or certainly being effective in curbing unhealthy lifestyles. We have this big problem with the obesity epidemic. And when you look at heart disease, my own research has found this, is that the best way to prevent heart disease and even manage people with heart disease, whether or not they choose to take a statin, is actually through lifestyle changes. So what does that mean in simple terms? It means cutting out ultra-processed foods, which is now half of the British diet. So foods that come in a packet that are full of unhealthy oils, carbohydrates, sugar, for example. Eating real food, basically. Moderate exercise, at least 30 minutes brisk walk a day. And also the other big sort of elephant in the room is stress reduction. Now, on top of that, Wessa, one of the reasons I think this has come into the news just now is obviously there's been a big concern recently around excess deaths. Now, the British Heart Foundation said certainly during the pandemic or since the pandemic, there's been 30,000 excess deaths specifically due to coronary artery disease. That's my area of expertise. And they're trying to figure out what's causing it. Chris Whitty recently suggested that it could be because people weren't prescribed statins or blood pressure pills. But Carl Hennigan, that unfortunately, I've got respect for Chris Whitty, but I think he's mistaken here, because analysis I've done, and even Carl Hennigan, the director of Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, Oxford, suggests that statin pills prescription hasn't reduced since the pandemic. So it's unlikely to be a cause. But what is almost certainly, and if you allow me to say this, Wessa, what my own research has found, and this is something that is probably a likely contributing factor, is that the COVID mRNA vaccines do carry a cardiovascular risk. And I've actually called for the suspension of this pending an inquiry, because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment about what's causing the excess deaths. Some of it will be ambulance delays. My own father, it was reported on BBC News in late 2021, I was the first to actually highlight the ambulance delays because my own father suffered a cardiac arrest at home, and the ambulance took 30 minutes.
And yeah, it really has a good point there, because when you see these people collapsing and experiencing heart attacks or other cardiovascular ailments, they say like, well, we don't know what it is, but then oh no, it's definitely not that. It's definitely not the COVID vaccines. But if you don't know what it is, then how do you know that it's not something? That's a big question I've heard a lot of people ask recently. So moving on back to the shooting from the Club Q. The suspect, Anderson Aldrich, appears in court and was charged with 12 new counts. This happened on the January 13th, or at least that's when it was reported. The suspected gunman, accused of killing 5 people in mass shooting at the LGBTQ nightclub in Colorado Springs, Colorado last November, is facing an additional 12 counts, raising the total to 317. Anderson Lee Aldrich appeared in the court in person Friday, where Colorado's 4th Judicial District Attorney Michael Allen announced the new felony charges, including 4 attempted murders charges and 2 hate crimes. Aldrich, 22, was initially charged in December for 305 counts, including charges of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, assault, and bias-motivated crimes causing bodily injury. So this is another in the stream of power plant attacks, and we've had, I think I heard there's like, it's either like between 7 and 10, maybe a little bit more across the country here. But this is a man faces terror charge for damaging a power plant outside of Las Vegas, and this occurred on January 6th. A man facing terror-related charges after police said he rammed his car through the gate at a solar plant outside Vegas and set his car on fire, disabling the huge facility. The Channel 8 News Now investigators have learned. Around 11:30 a.m. Wednesday, Las Vegas Metro Police responded to the solar panel plant, the US 93 north of Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Sources told 8 News that Now investigators and employees at the plant said that they found a car smoldering in a generator pit. And yeah, that's different, because I think the last one I heard about, someone was shooting at some kind of power facility, which either way, it's just not a good thing with all the. We get enough trouble with our electricity with all the weather we have. We don't need people going out there and going aggro trying to take them down too. That's just a little bit too far. So here on to some Tesla news. Tesla cuts vehicle prices in a bid to boost flagging demand. So this could be for a number of reasons, and they are pretty expensive cars when you're trying to get one, especially in this economy here. So that, with sales slowing and stock price tumbling, Tesla Incorporated slashed prices dramatically on Friday on several versions of its electric vehicles, making some of its models eligible for a new federal tax credit, which should help spur buyers' interest. But on to something else here. We've got, climate change puts more women at risk for domestic violence. From Kenya to India to the Philippines, more frequent and intense extreme weather events have led to escalating threats amongst women and girls. This is, in Umadro, Kenya, pilot Langwasi covers her mouth as she speaks when she's trying to hide her broken tooth, a bitter reminder of all she's endured, before finding refuge in a shelter for abuse survivors in northern Kenya. That's just tragic to hear about. But was it climate change, or is it just someone's, opinion that's using all this, all these horrible acts as emotional leverage to, push the climate narrative on people? But this is the other big news that's coming out. The classified documents that have been revealed that Joe Biden's been hiding pretty much everywhere, in his garage and in places he stayed, at the, I forget which university it is where he's supposedly writing his book. But anyways, here's a little bit on that.
When Vice President Biden left office, it looks like he took classified documents with him, and he was very critical of President Trump. By the way, the only person that has the constitutional ability to declassify any documents is the President of the United States, not the Vice President. So if then Vice President Biden took classified documents with him and held them for years and criticized former President Trump during that same time that he had those classified documents, and only after it was uncovered did he turn them back, I wonder why the press isn't asking the same questions of him as Vice President taking classified documents that they were asking President Trump.
This is Republican hypocrisy at its finest. When the former president had 320 documents found at his personal residence, they said that, quote, that will not be a priority. What President Biden did was disclose this to the archives, let law enforcement know. That is exactly the way that you should handle this. So we're going to support the fact that the president is following this established protocol, that he did the right thing, and see what other and see where we go from here. But we're not interested. Republicans aren't interested in having meaningful oversight. They're just interested in opposing this president.
Yeah, and that's the one thing they forget to mention with Biden's documents is that he was vice president when he was storing these, so like he did not have the wherewithal or the means to declassify these, and there's specific protocols for which people are supposed to store these classified documents, which he was not following, kind of like Hillary Clinton and her, handling of the digital files that she had on a private server that was, they were all supposed to be on a actual government server. And you look at the double standard, it really extends to more to President Trump, and like how his case was just handled by the media, and it's really just pretty sad the different treatment that the different parties give to people here. It's just a free pass, or just full on armed raid by the FBI. It's no good at all. But come up next here, this is how the NOTAM caused a widespread flight disruptions. This is from the Dallas AP. Until Wednesday, few travelers had ever heard of the Notice to Air Emissions, or NOTAM, nor did they know that the system used to generate these notices could cause widespread travel misery. As they arrived at the airports in the morning, they quickly found out that the Federal Aviation Administration computer system that compiles and distributes essential safety information for pilots went kaput. That temporarily grounded all flights nationwide and touched off a cascading air traffic jam that will take at least a day to unclog. More than 1,300 flights were canceled and 9,000 delayed by early evening on the East Coast because of the outage. According to the flight tracking website FlightAware, the system had been around for more than a half century, and it had evolved from paper to computers. It's the process of being updated currently. But so there's that's pretty much just suggesting that it was like human error, and that it wasn't there wasn't any legitimate reason for that. But this is another video that someone had passed our way here, and it talks about stellar phenomena, which might be responsible for that and other stuff we're experiencing here on Earth.
Active regions are on their way into view, both on the north and the south. The second X-class flare from a couple days ago ionized the southeast Pacific, if you'll recall.
So this is talking about solar flares and their impact on, looks like earthquakes is what they're talking about right here.
Call from our live stream. And just as the previous one ionized the southwest Pacific and was followed by quakes, we've got above average rumbling here. Luckily not too big, and hopefully it is all we'll get. After the USA had its flight systems issues yesterday, we apparently had similar problems in parts of Canada. As I said last night, there's no way to definitively tell if it's solar-related or solar fear-related on the part of the government, but time and time again, these flight system issues match up with inclement space weather.
Yeah, so that's something to think about. It might be, the government reacting and then just claiming negligence when they know something that they're not revealing to the public, or, it could just be coincidence too. Okay, so here are the concessions that Kevin McCarthy had to make to become House Speaker. So, and that's been a big, contention while, before he actually made it in. It was like, all these people, are just, the 20 people just wasting time. They could be getting stuff done. What are they really, what are they doing this for? It's just pointless, right? So here's what they achieve by doing this. Any member can call for a motion to vacate the speaker's chair, can remove, call to pretty much have McCarthy removed. A McCarthy-aligned super PAC, the Congressional Leadership Fund, agreed to not spend in open Republican primaries in safe seats. The House will hold votes on key conservative bills, including a balanced budget amendment, congressional term limits, and border security. Efforts to raise the national debt ceiling must be paired with spending cuts. Move 12 appropriation bills individually instead of passing separate bills to fund government operations. More Freedom Caucus representation on committees, including the influential House Rules Committee. Cap discretionary spending at fiscal year 2022 levels, which would amount to lower levels of defense and domestic programs. 72 hours to review bills before they come to the floor, which is a good thing because those things are like stacked. So, yeah, just like thousands of pages. Just ridiculous. Give members the ability to offer more amendments on the House floor. Create an investigative committee to probe the weaponization of the federal government. Restore the Hallman Rule, which can be used to reduce the salary of government officials. Yeah, that'd be good. Could see some salaries that could use reduction. So, what do we got here? About the fact-checkers caught colluding with a pedophile ring, questions raised. And this is the Gates Foundation giving $319 million to media outlets.
Even worse, a disturbing new report reveals that billionaire Bill Gates has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on funding mainstream media outlets all over the world, turning them into propaganda mouthpieces for his globalist agenda. An investigation by the independent outlet Mint Press reports that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has distributed $319 million in the form of over 30,000 individual grants to media outlets and fact-checkers. Major mainstream news outlets including CNN, NBC, The Atlantic, The Financial Times, BBC and others are all beneficiaries of Gates' funding.
Yeah. Yep, no good in the neighborhood with old Billy G involved. So what else we have from the World Economic Forum going on? As Mr. Yuval Noah Harari. What is he talking about here? In order to change your life in 2023, you need to do these three things first. Well, first off, he's talking about...
Like, it's not just what you learn in college or what you learned in kindergarten. It's even what you learned as a baby, as a toddler, like learning how to see or learning how to walk. And what does that mean? I have to relearn how to see and walk. Well, as virtual reality improves, and with all the talk of the metaverse and so forth that we'll discuss later on, increasingly it's likely that there will be many more activities shifting from the physical, biological world that we know into a new reality, a virtual reality, which has different physical and biological laws. Even the laws of physics there are different. So whether you want to interact socially there, or maybe you have a job in virtual reality, in the metaverse, or maybe you design, you have a new job designing fashion, designing shirts for virtual reality because people want to look good there.
Yeah. Virtual seamstress, or that sounds like a very boring gig. I don't know. Don't know how to deal with that. If you had a virtual reality job, how would you handle making virtual clothes? I guess it's better than like a virtual fast food job. I work at virtual Mickey D's where people can pull up and eat virtual horrible food. But here's another one from the World Economic Forum here. Humans must embrace becoming an energy source for AI machines. So where does that sound familiar from? That sounds kind of Matrix-y, doesn't it? Let's see what it says here.
Despite what the mainstream media are attempting to convince us, the World Economic Forum are not trying to fix the world for humanity. They're trying to fix things for a tiny minority of the world's population. And in order to do this, they are trying to break you. You might want to start paying closer attention. For instance, did you know that WEF advisor Bill Gates holds a patent with technology using humans to harness energy? And if that wasn't disturbing enough, Gates owns a second patent which gives him the exclusive rights to computerize the human body. This isn't a joke. Gates applied for and was granted a patent which gives him exclusive rights over your body. We are seeing rapid advancements in artificial intelligence, with many technology experts predicting that 2023 will be the year when advancements in machine learning go exponential. While the future is impossible to predict, it's widely expected that many, if not most, traditional occupations will be made redundant by AI. The concept of a redundant human race is a theme the WEF have been promoting for decades now. So it should come as no surprise that they're deeply excited about the explosive growth of AI and have begun promoting the idea of humans being subservient to machines.
Yeah, you can tell pretty much with old Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates what the agenda is there. It's eat the bugs, gonna have your little virtual cell where you can play around in the metaverse. And then, while you're doing that, you're just a battery for the AI that's managing your imprisonment. Does not sound too fun there, does it? What else do we have going here? Oh, yes, this is Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a renowned psychologist, and published 56 pages detailing the Ontario College of Psychologists' complaints against him, which led to their assertion that he needs to attend a social media re-education camp. This is up in Canada. They don't like his opinion, so he needs to be re-educated. Where have we heard that from before? That's Nazi Germany, maybe, I think. Yeah, something like that. But that's, it's not really too far away when you look at California here. We got where's that one right here? It is, right here.
Hello, my name is Dr. Shira Miller. I'm the founder and president of Physicians for Informed Consent, a 501c3 nonprofit educational organization. And I'm here representing all of our doctor members. We have been safeguarding informed consent in vaccination since 2015, and that is why we must oppose AB 2098, because it is anti-informed consent. I want you to imagine sitting in your doctor's office right now. Now, I want you to imagine a world where doctors cannot be honest with their patients about what they know and what they don't know, about what they recommend and what they don't recommend. In that world, patients would not become informed in conversations with their doctors. And the consent that they would be providing would be blind consent and possibly dangerous consent. We oppose AB 2098 because it is anti-informed consent, and we want to protect the health and safety of all Californians. We urge you to oppose AB 2098.
Yeah, AB 2098 is bad news. That's pretty much letting your politicians make your medical decisions, or telling your doctors anyways, which of their opinions are, really, really ones that they can share with you. So it's really a dangerous thing. We're going to go to another video on Jordan Peterson and his situation with his re-education camp. But first, we're going to go to a little LCP blip on our advertising that's available.
You own a business who might benefit from reaching a unique target audience of freedom-loving Humboldt citizens? If so, consider advertising with Lost Coast Populist. We have a growing number of options on our website and podcasts that might be right for helping you grow your business to a new customer base. Our team of skilled designers can even help you craft an advertisement that truly catches the eye.
Former University of Toronto professor and clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson is receiving heat from the College of Psychologists of Ontario. The regulatory body has ordered Peterson to undergo a media training program after they received complaints over his controversial tweets. Peterson has refused to do so. He says he could face a disciplinary hearing and possibly lose his clinical license. All this has raised questions around freedom of expression. I'd like to bring in James Turk. He is the director of the Centre for Free Expression at Toronto Metropolitan University. James, thanks for taking the time today.
My pleasure, Andrew.
So what do you think of this regulatory body ordering Peterson to take this media training program?
I'm quite troubled by the actions of the College of Psychologists. Now, I'm someone who really dislikes Jordan Peterson's positions on most things. So it's not a defense of Peterson, but it's, I think, really inappropriate overreach by the college to want to be able to censor political expression by someone.
Now, they concluded that he does pose moderate risks to the public, specifically around his refusal to use they, them pronouns. Just an example, referring to Catherine McKenney, a former Ottawa City Councillor who prefers to use they, them pronouns, as an appalling, self-righteous, moralizing thing, referring to actor Elliot Page in part, remember when pride was a sin. So, what do you say to the kind of comments that he has made and the conclusion that maybe these comments do pose a moderate risk to the public?
Well, I couldn't disagree more with the comments he's made. Mm-hmm. But the very nature of a democratic society, the heart of it, is an ongoing discussion, public discourse about what's legitimate and what's not legitimate. And that discourse cannot be ended without us moving toward an undemocratic society. The government can pass laws. We have all sorts of restrictions on free speech that are set collectively by governments in terms of you can't engage in violence. I can't beat somebody up and say, well, I'm just expressing my dislike of them. And you can't engage in defamation or perjury. So there are a variety of limits. And if Dr. Peterson violated any of those, he would be charged appropriately, or legal actions would be taken. But beyond that, democracy depends on a really open discussion, debate about things. And the way you respond to expressions you think are harmful or troubling or whatever is by countering them, criticizing them, not by trying to say, well, I have the right to censor what you can say. Because when I say that, I'm really saying what I think should limit what you can hear. And I don't think the College of Psychologists has that role, except in relation to the professional practice of psychologists.
So how do you draw the line between what is said in a professional capacity versus, say, a tweet that is done in private?
Well, first of all, as I understand it, Peterson has not been practicing psychology for 5 or 6 years. But insofar as he's practicing psychology, if there's any suggestion that he's behaved inappropriately in how he's treated a patient or a client, then a complaint can be made to the college, and they should intervene in that case. But as I've seen all of the complaints that have been registered with the college, none of them had to do with his practice of psychology. They all had to do with people disliking the political content of his messages. And they have every right to object to his political content, but it's wrong to solve that problem by trying to get the College of Psychologists to censor him. That just opens a door to, right now people like me who don't like what he has to say may cheer and say, that's wonderful. The less we hear of that kind of stuff, the better. But if you set that precedent, you could have a different makeup of the College of Psychologists may decide that people like me who are transpositive, who are pro-LGBTQ, who have a variety of progressive values, could be censored. We just don't, that's not how we deal with disagreements about political speech in a democratic society, by having private bodies, whether it be the College of Psychologists or others, decide what the rest of us could say and not say.
James, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Andrew. Bye-bye.
James Turk is the director of the Centre for Free Expression at Toronto Metropolitan University in Toronto.
Well, that was a really interesting little snippet, I mean, to me, it kind of ties back to what we're experiencing locally with, the all-age drag shows and the media censorship, just the way they label anybody who has a different opinion on it as a extremist or a hate group. It's kind of another way of silencing, and they're not trying to mandate re-education camps or re-education programs for anybody who thinks out of line yet, but I guess that might not be too far off if things continue the way they do without people getting together and just standing up for, like they're saying at the end of that last video, just freedom of speech, freedom to have your own opinion. But anyways, Ash Teeter is signing out of this episode of Reading Between the Headlines, and I will talk to you folks next time. Thank you. Bye.